I think the impact of vision, obviously in the vestibular system, on gait is so important that you would have to almost have another course specifically for that. So, talk to me about all this vision stuff, Paul.
Yeah.
Like, I want to
Okay.
know all about it. Like, how do you, is there anything, um, is there anything easy that clinicians listening could be like, this is something that I would look for and this is something I would do?
Yes, there is. There's lots of easy things, and hopefully we can go through some of those kind of really practical, simple, equipment-free things that people can try on themselves and on their patients in clinic. But the first body to try these things is always yourself, because if you can see an effect there, then you're much more likely to kind of produce that kind of clinically and bring it with confidence to the clinic. So yes, walking is a biomechanical activity, but we can look at it through another lens. And obviously you build it from the foot up. And I talk about that every day. I put people in barefoot shoes on a weekly basis. I get people to take their shoes off to do their exercises. All those things are really important because the foot's this kind of bed of sensory proprioceptive input to the brain for walking. But proprioception is one leg of a three-legged stool. And nobody that's sighted can walk without changing their visual activity. That's just hardwired into us. And we are all, if we are able to walk, we are using our vestibular system, so our inner ear is active in order to maintain balance. Humans are innately unstable. And it's easy to forget this as we walk along feeling like it's nothing, but you're actively balancing just to be upright. And a great example is what happens if you faint, right? So if a human being is in locomotion in faint, they don't faint in the middle of stride and stay there. Even if they're a stiff human, they fall over like a sack of meat, because that's what you are without a nervous system lighting it up. And the big news is that your eyes are kind of connected to everything you use as you walk along. So when you shift from sitting in a chair to walking, your brain experiences visual flow. So peripheral vision starts to move around, and that's our first clue that we're moving forward. And that activates an increase in lateral saccadic activity in the visual system. So we start scanning because we can't look everywhere at once. We're only ever looking at a really small part of our visual field. And so in order to give us a big visual field, as we walk, our eyes are engaged in a lateral saccadic movement. 3 times every second, you move your eyeballs. Due to the limitations of how an eye works, you are visually blind for that moment while you move your eyes. So 3 times every second, your eyeball is not transmitting any information back into the rest of the brain because it's busy making movement. So a really good place to start if you'd like to improve how somebody walks is to get them really good at having 2 targets in front of them and simply jumping their eyes laterally from side to side. And the job is to try and keep the head as still as possible and move the eyes as quickly and as accurately as possible, because that replicates the natural visual task that your brain goes through automatically, hardwired into us potentially, but certainly once we've learned to walk, the brain just knows to do this when we walk. So you don't have to think about doing it when you're walking, but the faster you're able to make that movement, the more time you can spend seeing and the less time you spend moving. And that gives us more sensory information, which makes walking feel smoother, safer, easier, less risk of falling, less issues with going fast. So
So
that's the
is that an assessment that you do, like how fast they can do it? Or what do you see that would be, I don't want to say incorrect, but something that you would want to work on?
Okay, so the biggest clue that somebody needs to practice this visual element to walking is that they have lost their ability to keep their head still during locomotion. So if we're seeing lateral sway of the head, that might be, you might look at that and go, okay, you're lacking like length tension relationships in your glutes,
Yeah.
and you're lacking kind of absorbency in your spine. But the brain's way of looking at it is, no, maybe that's deliberate because it replaces the saccade. The eyes won't do it. So now the head's scanning range of motion. But anybody who has an increased lateral sway almost guarantee 30 seconds of this, and they'll get up and walk up and down the room and be sort of amazed at the way the system is changing so quickly and so effortlessly. Because remember, I'm lazy and I want quick results. And so that's why we go after brains. And in Gait, there is this hardwired thing where we're all, to a greater or lesser extent, going into an increase in lateral saccadic movement. And it was that observation that gave rise to EMDR, psychotherapy treatment, where they're stimulating this, and it's based on a neuroscience professor's observation that people are calmer when they're walking. So she wanted to replicate that, and it actually has other benefits as well. This is just side to side, but it's using the tiny lateral and medial rectus muscles of the eyeball, and your eyeball has. Hang on.
You have an eyeball model like I have foot models laying around.
I have an eyeball. I have an inner ear. I've got ankles and knees and stuff as well. But our eyeball has this meticulously precise sling of muscles that surround it and allow it to move north and south and inward and outward and on the diagonal lines. And we use these tiny muscles mainly reflexively, but we can wrestle control of them voluntarily. And any weakness in the visual field is going to impact on the brain's motor cortex of the eyeball. So we've got the main sensory motor cortex within the brain, but sitting just off to the side of that, we have like a mini version of that for the eyeballs. But they're now showing that really informs what the brain thinks is possible in the broader motor context. So there is some neuroscience to support the idea that where you are unable to move your eyeballs, you will have great difficulty moving your body. And this basically boils into why Gait's so important. Gait's important because it's our fundamental natural biological pattern of movement, and we are evolved animals that come from the wild world, where sensory inputs are always the predicator to movement. So if we can see the world well, then we are more likely to move through it smoothly and with better coordination. So specific to Gait, lateral saccades. Specific to all human beings who have functioning vision, and leaving visual impairment and blindness aside for 1 minute. Basically, the reason nobody knows they've got weak eyeballs is because your brain is always preoccupied by the primary task of vision. And that's hardwired. You don't get a choice in that as far as I'm concerned. I think it is almost certain that certain elements of how your brain processes vision are there from the get-go. They're genetically derived as part of the brain's structure. And that's why we can't break visual illusions. So those light and dark ones, Rock Tape always used to show the one of the cube in shadow, and the grey and the white are actually the same color, but your brain says they're different colors. In that same way that we're kind of we're hardwired to process vision, we're hardwired to maintain visual fields. So if you have a weak eye movement, you don't sense a blind spot, you don't sense double vision or lack of color or depth perception. You adjust your physicality, your meat and bones, to allow you to keep seeing what's going on. And so we'll see funny things like people whose head like bobs to one side when they walk, and often we'll be able to reflect that in the visual field. So the best way to work out whether your eyes are weak or not is to shut them, because with your eyes shut, you're not distracted by what you can see. And so the opening drill, and I do this frequently during assessment, well, I might be doing something else. I might be treating a part of the body. I'll say, just while you're there on the bed, all I want you to do is close your eyes, and I want you to move them on a north-south, left-right axis, and then on the diagonal axis. And in doing that, and people can do that right now as they're watching this, it's really obvious where you've got weakness.
I'm
Because the
going to do it.
moment you do it, so shut your eyes,
Okay.
look up. So just pull your eyes up. So you're trying to look up to the sky as hard as you can. Hold that for a couple of seconds. And now look down as far as you can. And you're trying to keep your eyelids gently shut while you're doing this. Eyes go down, back to the middle. And then eyes go left. And then eyes go right. And then eyes go up and left. And then down and right. And then up and right. And down and left.
Yeah, Paul, both up directions were hard.
Yes. And that's not a surprise to anyone who's watching this video, because you can see it in the way your eyelids flicker, your neck strains to go up. Because our eyeballs, these two little mobile bits of brain extension, favorite fact about an eyeball, Courtney, it isn't a sensory organ. Your inner ear, which we'll come on to in a minute, is a sensory organ. A Ruffini corpuscle on the end of a nerve is a sensory organ. Your eye is developmentally part of your brain sticking out the front of your face. It's not an organ, it's an expansion of your neural network. So your eyeballs are literally your brain peering out at the world. And it's controlled by these 6 muscles that your brain thinks are really important because it has wired them more precisely than any other muscle that's ever been studied. So a motor unit is the ratio between the number of muscle fibers that one terminal nerve branch supplies. And in quads and gastrocs, those numbers rise into tens to 20s of thousands of muscle fibers that all contract in unison when that nerve tells it to do that. So it's like the pixelation of the muscle, the level of fine control that we have. So if it's 1 to 20,000 in your quad and similar in like your back extensors and big muscles like that, people will be surprised to hear in your eyeball, they argue, and no one can quite decide, but it's definitely less than 10 fibers per nerve ending.
No shit.
So your brain wants high control over this system. And it's not just about moving your eyeballs, because a lot of what happens visually is this. We move the head around while we keep the eyes on target. The eyeball muscles alone can't do that. They need to know what the head's doing.